My mother spoiled my son rotten for years, undid every rule I made, and once laughed when he stole from my purse. So when he finally turned on her, I used her own sweet words right back at her. My son Trevor used to be a normal kid. Then my mother decided he could do no wrong, and she meant it with her whole chest. Whatever Trevor wanted, Trevor got. If he asked for one toy, she bought two. If he broke something, she said the thing was cheap and was probably going to break anyway. When he was 7, he threw a full plate at the wall because his eggs were the wrong shape, and my mother clapped and said he had strong opinions and would grow up to be a leader. I told her to stop. She told me I smothered him. By the time he was 10, he had stopped asking for things and started taking them. At the park, he walked up to a smaller boy, took his bike, and rode off. The boy cried. The dad came over, and before he could say a word, my mother stepped in front of Trevor and said the little ones needed to learn to share. Trevor kept the bike. At a restaurant for his 11th birthday, he spit a mouthful of food back onto the plate and called it garbage, loud enough for the whole room to hear. My mother told the waiter the cooks should be ashamed and demanded the meal be free. It was. Trevor learned that being awful got him a free dinner. His teacher called me that fall to say Trevor had told her to shut up in class. I grounded him. My mother drove to the school the next morning, sat in the principal's office, and said the teacher had a problem with my son and was singling him out. Trevor got moved to a class he liked better. He came home and told me, word for word, that grandma fixed it and I should have just let her handle it. He was 11. At 12, he took $40 out of my purse. I caught him. I said that was stealing. He said it was the family's money, so it was his money too. When I tried to take it back, he slapped my hand away, hard, and my mother laughed from the couch and said, "Look how independent he is." That was the word she used. Independent. I stood there with a red mark on my hand while my mother laughed at it. Every time I tried to set a rule, she undid it within the day. If I said no screens, she handed him her tablet. If I said no dessert until dinner, she fed him cake in the car. If I said he had to apologize to someone, she told him he didn't owe anybody anything and that people were just jealous of him. I would walk into the room and find them on the couch, her phone in his hands, a plate of cookies between them, and she would look up at me with this little smile like she was waiting for me to dare say something. He grew up believing every word of it because the most important adult in his life proved it to him over and over. By 13, he had been suspended twice. Once for throwing a textbook at a substitute. Once for telling a girl in his class she was ugly until she cried. Both times my mother told me the school was overreacting. Both times she took him out for ice cream the day he came home. So nobody was surprised, but everybody was. The day it finally happened. We were at the grocery store, the three of us. A pregnant woman, very far along, was reaching past Trevor for something on a low shelf. He didn't ask her to move. He put both hands on her shoulder and shoved her sideways into the cart. She went down onto one knee. People gasped. And my mother, my own mother, looked at this pregnant woman on the floor of a grocery store and said, in her sweetest voice, that she really should be more careful in her condition and shouldn't crowd a child. Her husband got there and helped her up, shaking, and asked Trevor what was wrong with him. And Trevor shrugged and said she was in his way. He reached past her belly, grabbed the box he wanted off the shelf, and walked toward the registers like nothing had happened. I apologized to that woman until I ran out of words, and the entire time my mother kept tugging my sleeve telling me to stop making a scene. That was the day I stopped. Not loudly. I just stopped catching him. I stopped paying back the things he took. I stopped writing the apology notes, and most of all, I stopped backing up my mother's version of him. So when Trevor turned on her, there was no one left standing in the way. It took about a year. He had run out of strangers to push, so he pointed everything at the only person who had ever told him yes. First it was small things. He started talking to her the way he had always talked to me. He told her cooking was disgusting. He told her she dressed like an old lady. He told her she was boring. Each one a little louder than the last. Each one followed by him watching to see if she would do anything about it. She didn't. Of course she didn't. She had spent 14 years teaching him there was nothing he could do that would cost him anything. And now he was testing the lesson she had drilled into him for half his life. Then he wanted her car. She finally, for the first time in his entire life, said, "No, not yet. You're not ready." He told her she was old and useless and the car would be his anyway when she died. She laughed it off like always, but it was a smaller laugh now. He started taking her cash the way he used to take mine, walking right past her into her bedroom, opening her wallet on her dresser, taking what he wanted, putting it back. When she finally said something, he shoved past her in her own hallway, and her shoulder hit the wall hard enough to leave a mark she had to cover with a sweater for a week. She called me that night, crying, and asked me what she was supposed to do about him. I told her that he sounded independent, just like she said the day he slapped my hand by the stove, and I used the exact same sweet voice she had used back then. The silence on the other end was so long, I thought she had hung up. Then I heard her breathing, shaky and wet. She said that wasn't the same thing, and I knew it. I asked her what was different now. Was it only stealing when it came from her wallet instead of mine? Was it only violence when he shoved her into a wall and not me? She started crying harder. I had waited 14 years to say these words back to her, and now that I finally had, it didn't feel like winning. It felt like the truth landing where it should have landed a long time ago. She tried one more time. She said, "That's not the same thing, and you know it." I kept my voice calm. I said, "When he took $40 out of my purse and slapped my hand, you laughed. You sat right there and said, 'Look how independent he is.' So what's different now, Mom? Is it only stealing when it's your money?" She said she didn't mean it like that. She was just joking around back then. She never thought it would turn into this. I said, "I'm not gonna fix this for you. I tried for 14 years and you undid every single thing I did. You told that man at the park his kid needed to learn to share after Trevor stole a bike right off the sidewalk. You got his dinner free at the restaurant. You went to the school and got him moved. This is what you built, Mom, brick by brick." She said, "You're my daughter. You're supposed to help me." I said, "And you were supposed to help me raise him. You raised him your way. This is your way." She didn't answer for a second. Then she went somewhere I didn't expect. She said, "You've always been jealous of how he loves me. Even when he was little, you couldn't stand that he ran to me first." I held the phone away from my ear for a second because I needed to look at it, to make sure I had actually heard what I just heard. Then I brought it back and said, "Mom, he shoved you into a wall. Listen to yourself. And then he shoved you into a wall and you're still trying to make this about me." She hung up. I sat at the dining table with the phone in my hand for a long time. I thought I would feel powerful. I didn't. I just felt tired. I texted Alfred. He came over that night and sat with me on the couch. Alfred Alfred is warm and steady. He doesn't raise his voice unless there's a real reason. I had been seeing him a year. He had watched me try to hold a line my mother tore down weekly, and he had never once told me I was being too hard. 2 days later, Esperanza sent a text like nothing had happened. Trevor wants to come stay with you this weekend. I knew what it meant. She wanted a break. She wanted him out of her house for 2 days so she could breathe and not flinch when she heard footsteps in the hallway, but she would never say that out loud. I typed back, he's welcome here if he follows my rules. Her reply came in under a minute. Don't start with the rules. He just needs a change of scenery. I laughed at the counter. Not because it was funny, because 12 hours after telling me she didn't know what happened to him, she was right back to protecting the version of him she invented. Trevor showed up Friday like a storm, walking through the front door. He didn't say hello. He didn't take off his shoes. He dropped his bag in the hallway and said he was hungry. Alfred was there. I had told him I needed someone who wouldn't fold. Within 10 minutes, Trevor opened the fridge, pulled out the casserole I had prepped, and started eating it with his bare hands at the counter. I kept my voice even. I said, that's dinner. Sandwich or wait 2 hours. He blinked. He said, Grandma lets me eat whatever I want. I said, you're not at Grandma's house. He put the food back. He actually closed the fridge and walked to the couch. I had been so ready for a fight that the quiet confused me too. At dinner, he put both his feet up on the table, dirty shoes and all. Alfred didn't yell. He said, feet off the table. House rules. Trevor's eyes went straight to me, waiting for me to wave it off. I kept eating. He put his feet down. Saturday, he asked for my car. I said no. He said he'd take it anyway. I said if he did, I'd report it. His face changed. Not anger. Confusion. Like the rules of the game had changed mid-play. He went to the guest room and slammed the door. An hour later, I heard his phone ring through the wall, then heard him say, Mom won't let me do anything. She's being crazy. A minute later, he came out and walked up to me at the counter and said, Grandma says you need to relax and stop being so controlling. I picked up my own phone and called Esperanza right there in front of him. She picked up on the first ring. I said, Mom, if you undermine me one more time while he's in my house, I'll send him back tonight and you can deal with whatever he does next by yourself. She didn't argue. In a voice so small I almost didn't recognize it, she said, fine. Trevor watched me. Something in his face shifted. Not respect, not yet, but close. Sunday evening, when it was time to go back, Trevor stood in the doorway with his bag in one hand and said, can I just stay here? I asked him why. He shrugged the way teenagers do when they're trying to act like something doesn't matter. He said, it's quieter here. You're mean, but at least you're not fake about it. I felt my throat tighten. It was the most honest thing he had said in years. I wanted to grab him and hold him like I did when he was little. I wanted to cry. I didn't do either because I knew if I got emotional, he would shut right back down. I told him he could stay one more night, but he was going back tomorrow. He nodded and went to his room and closed the door gently this time. No slam. I sat on the porch with Alfred. The air was cool and smelled like cut grass. I could hear crickets in the yard, steady and unhurried, the kind of sound that doesn't notice you no matter what happened inside. I said, he's still in there somewhere, but my mother is going to pull him right back out the second he walks back into her house. Alfred was quiet for a minute. Then he said, then don't let her. I said, it's not that simple. He said, it is. You just keep thinking it isn't because she's your mother. She doesn't get a pass on this anymore. Not after what he did to that woman at the store. Not after the wallet. Not after the wall. I didn't answer. I just sat there listening to the crickets and thinking about how many porches I had sat on over 14 years, telling myself it would get better. Trevor went back Monday. By Wednesday, Esperanza had bought him new sneakers and let him skip school because he said he was bored. Everything I built over one weekend, gone in 3 days, undone by the same woman who undid every other thing I ever tried to teach him. So I started a notebook. Alfred told me to document everything. Dates, what was said, who saw it. I went back through the years and wrote down what I could prove or what I had seen myself. One entry per page, dated as best I could remember. I added new ones as they happened. I had no plan for it yet. I just knew I was tired of being the only person in the room who remembered. 2 weeks later, Esperanza called. Not crying this time. Angry. She was already at full heat when I picked up. She said, Trevor broke my dining table. He just flipped it. I told him he couldn't have the car and he flipped the whole table. I let the silence hang for a second. Then, in the quietest, gentlest voice I could manage, I said, Mom, he's just expressing himself. Remember, he has strong opinions. He's going to be a leader. The sound that came through the phone was something between a scream and a sob. She yelled, stop throwing my words back at me. This is serious. I said, it was serious when he was 7 and you clapped for him throwing a plate at the wall. You just didn't think so then. She hung up. A few days later, she called with a plan. Her voice was different this time. Not angry, not crying, tired. Older than I had ever heard her sound. She said Trevor needed both of us. She said she had been thinking about it all week and she couldn't do this alone anymore. She said something had happened the night before that she couldn't tell me about over the phone. I asked her what. She said she would tell me when I got there. She wanted me to come to her house for a meeting. Just her, me, and Trevor. I said I would come, but I was bringing Alfred. She didn't like that. I could tell by the way she paused, by the little sigh she let out. She didn't fight it either. She just said fine. We drove over Saturday afternoon. She had rearranged the living room. Chairs facing the couch like a courtroom. Coasters out. A pitcher of water on the side table. Trevor sat on the couch with his arms crossed, legs spread out, looking bored. Esperanza stood and said, we all need to work together to help Trevor. I said, help him how? She said, he needs more support, more love, more patience. I almost laughed. The same answer she had been giving for 14 years. Alfred leaned forward and said, he needs consequences. That's what support looks like for a kid who shoves pregnant women. Esperanza's face went red. She said, that was one time. I said, it's never one time, Mom. It's every time. You just only count the ones you can't explain away. She opened her mouth and closed it. Trevor stood up fast. The couch cushion shifted and Esperanza flinched, just slightly, just enough for me to notice. He said, I don't need any of you. You all just talk about me like I'm broken. He walked toward the door. Esperanza moved toward him with her hands out. Sweetheart, sit down. We're doing this for you. Trevor stopped. He turned around slowly. He said, no, you're doing this for you because you're scared of me now and you want Mom to come fix it. Nobody breathed. He walked out. The door slammed so hard the water in the pitcher rippled. Esperanza stood there facing the door with her back to us. Her shoulders were shaking. She turned around slowly and looked at me, and her face was wet, tears running down both cheeks, her chin trembling, her eyes wide and lost like a person who had just been told something she already knew but had been running from for years. She whispered, "He's right. I am scared of him." It was the first honest thing she had said in 14 years. Not wrapped in an excuse, not buried under a butt, not followed by "he's just going through something." Just the raw, ugly, simple truth. Alfred touched my shoulder and said he would wait in the car. Esperanza and I moved into the back of the house to the counter. She sat on a bar stool. I sat across from her. The light overhead was that yellow kind that makes everything look tired. She stared at the spot where the dining table used to be before Trevor flipped it. Scratches on the tile where the legs had dragged. She didn't talk for a long time. Minutes. Real minutes. Not the kind that just feel long. I watched the clock on the microwave change twice before she opened her mouth. When she finally spoke, her voice was thin. She said, "I don't know how to make him stop." I didn't answer right away. I let the silence sit there because I wanted her to hear her own words hanging in the air. Then I said, "You can't make him stop, Mom. You never taught him how to stop. Every time he crossed a line, you told him there was no line." She flinched. Then she said, "I just wanted him to feel loved. My parents never let me have anything. They never said yes. I swore I would be the person who said yes." I said, "But you didn't just say yes to him. You said no to me. Every rule I made, you broke. Every consequence I gave, you took away. You didn't just spoil him. You erased me as his mother." She put both hands over her face. I reached into my bag and pulled out the notebook. I set it on the counter between us. She looked at it through her fingers, confused. I opened to the first page. I said, "Let me read you something." And I started. I read the date from the park. I said, "Trevor took a bike from a smaller boy. The kid's father came over. You stepped in front of Trevor and said, 'The little ones need to learn to share.'" I turned the page. I read the date from the restaurant. Trevor spit food onto a plate and called it garbage in front of the whole room. You told the waiter the cook should be ashamed and got the meal for free. I turned the page. The teacher. His teacher said Trevor told her to shut up in class. I grounded him. You drove to the school and told the principal she was singling him out. He got moved. I read the day he took $40 from my purse. He slapped my hand when I tried to take the money back. You laughed. You said, "Look how independent he is." I read the grocery store. The pregnant woman. He shoved a pregnant woman into a cart with both hands. She went down on one knee. You looked at her on the floor and said she should be more careful in her condition and shouldn't crowd a child. After the park, Esperanza's chin was trembling. After the restaurant, her eyes were closed. After the teacher, she gripped the edge of the counter so hard her knuckles went white. After the $40 and the slap, tears were running down her face and she wasn't wiping them away. After the pregnant woman, after I read back her exact words, the ones she had said while a woman knelt on a grocery store floor holding her belly, she folded. She bent forward on the stool until her forehead almost touched the counter, and she sobbed so hard her whole body shook with it. Deep, ugly sobs from somewhere she had been keeping locked up for years. By the 6th entry, she couldn't sit up straight. I watched my mother hear herself for the first time. Not my version of her, not my interpretation. Her own words, read back to her with dates and details, one after another, like receipts for everything she bought and never paid for. I let her cry. I didn't comfort her. After a while, she lifted her head just enough to look at me. Her face was swollen and blotchy. She whispered, "I ruined him, didn't I?" I closed the notebook. I put my hands on top of it. I said, "You didn't ruin him, but you broke every tool I had to reach him, and now we both have to live with that." She waited for me to soften it. I didn't. I said, "If you want to be in his life going forward and in mine, you follow my lead, not yours. Mine. You don't buy him things without asking me. You don't override a single rule. You don't tell him he's right when he's wrong. If you can't do that, then I take him, and you don't see either of us until you can." She said, "You'd really keep him from me." I held her gaze. I said, "Mom, you kept him from me for 14 years. You just did it with a smile." Something broke in her when I said that. She didn't argue. She didn't bring up her parents or how much she loved Trevor or how I was being unfair. She just sat on that stool with the scratched floor and the missing table, and she nodded, slowly, quietly, and for the first time in my entire life, she said, "Tell me what to do. I'll listen." I reached across the counter and picked up her phone. I found Trevor's number and called. He picked up on the second ring. He didn't say hello. He just breathed into the phone, waiting, probably expecting Esperanza's voice. Instead, he got mine. I said, "Come home. We need to talk. All three of us. And Trevor, this isn't a conversation where Grandma saves you. This is the conversation where we all start over, or we don't start at all." The line was quiet. I could hear traffic in the background. He sat in that silence for a long time. Then he said, "Fine." The fridge hummed. The porch light clicked on. Headlights turned into the driveway. Esperanza looked at me. Neither of us moved. I walked to the door.